If you want to change your life, you need to talk to people. If you want a new relationship, it starts with a conversation. If you want a new client, that starts with a conversation too. And if you want to sell product to many people, you've got to talk to many people. Connection and conversation is so critically important, especially in the age of AI, where just having a clear signal makes deeper connections and helps you rise to the top. My guest today, Jeff Callahan, is the author of a book, Confidence Maxing. He has so many unique perspectives. He has a very interesting way of seeing things that just makes sense. At the end, we talk a little bit about the idea of confidence, the idea of presence, and how these are like zip files that actually have so many other things within it. You kind of have to click into it and expand that. I enjoyed this conversation a lot. And if you are looking to increase your influence in your niche in any sphere whatsoever, just looking to get started on YouTube, starting a podcast, or just appear on a podcast, getting that confidence in your message is so important. Jeff Callahan, I'm so glad you're here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm excited to be here, Kathy.
Awesome. Great. Well, for our audience, just give us a high level overview of who you are and what brought you to where you are now.
Yeah. My name is Jeff Callahan, and I'm the founder of Become More Compelling. And my backstory is that all the way from junior high, high school, even some of college, and even some professionally, I was painfully shy. In fact, I had a speech impediment so bad I couldn't say my own name. And as you might imagine, that made it a little bit more difficult than it needed to be to, as far as connecting with other people and improve my people skills. And yeah, I realized I was like, you know what? I'm planning on living a long time. I don't particularly want to live the rest of my life this way. So I went on a self development binge. And in 2014, I founded Become More Compelling, where my simple goal is to help people develop their people skills, their social confidence, so that they can get more out of life by connecting with other people. And recently, I depends on when you listen to this. I am a published author. If you listen to this after February 10th, my book Confidence Maxing is coming out soon. So I've been going through that whole process, and that's been a lot of fun too.
That is amazing. And you've obviously done quite well with this because you're on podcasts now. And that could be very frightening for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because of my business, I've had to be in front of the camera quite a bit.
Yeah.
I'm the only person in my company outside of the contractors that I have. And so it's all on me to do these guest appearances. And you're right when you say that some people, they get extremely nervous when they appear on camera. And it's something that I started making videos back in, 2014, something like that. And
Yeah.
so kind of by brute force had to hammer that fear, anxiety out of my system. So yeah,
Yeah.
you're right.
How did you do that?
Large volume of repetition,
Yeah.
an insane amount of just trial and error, trial and error, trial and error. And I vividly remember in our old house, I had a studio in the back room, and when those first videos, I would try something, it wouldn't work very well, and I would just sit down on the floor. I'd be like, "Oh my god, this is so difficult." But the reality is, like any skill, you just have to put in, and I talk about this in the book, but my equation for confidence is simply skills plus reps plus time. And you
Mm.
can't shortcut any of it. You got to have the skills, you got to put in the reps, and then you have to put in those reps over time. And then you will become confident at whatever it happens to be. I do a lot of communication skills, but it doesn't matter what skill you're doing. It could be programming WordPress, right? Like you just have to bang your head against the problem over and over. And then if you're doing the right things over a long enough time horizon, you're going to become more competent and confident, whether you want to or not.
Right. Yeah. It's almost like confidence comes from doing it. You can't like talk yourself into the confidence first. The action has to come first, the repetition has to happen, and then you become confident that yes, you can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. And I think it's the number one fear, even higher than death, is the fear of public speaking. Nobody wants to do it, do they?
No, They don't want to do it. And the reality is sometimes you're thrust into it. Maybe your company's like, hey, I want you to give this talk. And they're like, they're not suggesting, they're telling you to do it, right? Or it might just be presenting something at a meeting. But I think the kernel fear of public speaking can range from I'm just talking to one other person to I'm talking to a room of 100 or 1,000 people. And so uh, I think what a lot of people find is after they do something and it goes better than they expected, they realize that there was a false story they were telling themselves about, oh, it's going to be the worst thing in the world. And it's like, well, actually, no, it ended up being okay. It ended up being somewhere in the realm of survivable to enjoyable, somewhere in that
Yeah.
range.
Yeah. Yeah. But you'll never know unless you try.
That's right.
What would your advice be to someone who they don't feel confident anywhere, or the story that they're telling themselves in their head is, I can't, it's too hard. Who am I to do this? So sort of the imposter syndrome. They just have a number of different stories that tell them that they can't do something, anything, but it's something that they either want to do or something they feel like they have to do, but they just are so blocked.
Yeah. So what I found is that typically a feeling of lack of confidence, i- it's hinged on I'm trying to do this new thing typically. Because if you've done something for a large amount of reps, then you end up feeling competent at it, right? So a lot of people end up feeling competent at a lot of the aspects of their job, but then there might be something that they want. It might be a solopreneur project that they're doing or something else that where it's new territory. And so one of the most important things that you have to realize is everything is going to be difficult in the beginning, but the more I do something, the effort involved is going to decrease. And so keeping that in mind of look, everything will be difficult in the beginning. The more I do it, the easier it will get. And so that a lot of times helps people get that initial push of like expecting it to be a little bit more challenging in the beginning. The example I always use is say that it's January, you're going into the gym, you're going to get fit this year finally. And you've never done anything like that before. Well, when you go in, you have to learn all of the different lifts that you might do. You have to try not to injure yourself. You don't know where to put your water bottle. You don't know what the check-in process is at the front desk. And so the cognitive load is extremely high. But 6 months later, if you stick with it for that amount of time, you go in, you kind of zone out, you play your podcast, maybe you talk to a couple people, and then you're already back at your car and you're like, what happened? I just went in and did all of it because the repetitions that you've put in end up making the entire process really easy. And to your point, in the very beginning, I think really keying in on small victories that you can stack and then reviewing those victories. I call it social wins in the context of communication, where you cannot be confident unless you feel competent. And so the way to feel competent is to try things and then write down even like the smallest victory. Like I made eye contact with someone, I smiled at someone, and then review those every week. And so you create a constant winning state that then develops into confidence later on because you're showing your mind frequent proof of your own competence. And eventually you're going to start
Mm.
believing the proof.
Right. That is so true. It almost becomes, once you do something new and you do like going to the gym, think about how many times you drive. If you do go to the gym and you've developed that habit and you forgot how you even drove there or how you checked in, it just becomes such a habit. It becomes almost unconscious. And then those things that seem scary at first are now unconscious capabilities that we take it for granted a lot of times too, that we've
Mhm.
created these unconscious capabilities. And then I think a lot of times people talk themselves into thinking, well, the things that I can do, all the habits that I have that maybe other people don't have, I'll talk myself into thinking, well, everybody knows this or everybody else can do this
Yeah.
because I can. And it just seems like such a basic thing that it doesn't seem like something that I should be sharing because everybody knows. Like in my space, a lot of times it's security. Well, everybody's using a password manager. And then I talk to somebody and it's like, oh my gosh, no, they're not. And
Uh-uh.
they need to know
No.
this. We talk ourselves out of doing so many things, don't we?
Yeah. In reality, they're using the same password they've had since 1998, and it's just with some extra numbers and the exclamation point at the end because they've had to, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and you're right when you say there's. I think I've heard this referred to as like the curse of the expert, where
Mm,
you assume that, oh, doesn't everyone know this? Well, actually, no, they don't.
yeah.
It's like the fish swimming in the water, and you're like, oh yeah, well, everyone knows that there's all this water around us. One of the things I thought about as I was writing my book, I actually have a sticky note right here on my computer that says the chapter you write today will end up being the most important chapter someone will ever read. But the thing is, I don't know which chapter that is because it's going
Right.
to be different for every person. Because for some people, the way you explain something, even though you've heard it 1,000 times, and the way you deliver that information to that person is going to hit them at the exact right time, where they're going to connect with it and be like, oh my God, I've lived my entire life this way. And now my entire life is different because I understand in the way that you said it. And so not taking your own knowledge for granted is also really important, I think.
Right. Yeah, because everybody that consumes your content, that reads your book, is having their own individual experience of it too. So, like, I've written a couple of books. Like the thing I noticed was the writing of the book, the publishing of the book is one thing, but then when people get it into their hands and you get feedback, it's like each person has their own experience of it. Their own, like they get something out of it that's uniquely them. So it's like that experience is not yours. Like it's almost like you birth this thing out into the world and you have to almost enjoy and let go at the same time. Like enjoy the fact that yes, I made an impact on someone, but it's not mine to it. Like I didn't do it. Like they took it in a
Right.
certain way, right? So
Yeah.
it's really interesting. And I think as more and more content creators start putting information out there, sharing their knowledge, sharing their expertise, taking that leap of faith into being confident in front of a camera or writing a book, whatever they're doing, really understanding that who you're doing it for. It's not about you, right?
Yeah. It's so funny because, and I don't know if this is your experience with your book, is for me, it took a year, like a year of
Yeah.
writing. Like the amount of writing versus editing, I feel like the editing took 2x as long
Yeah.
as the writing, the polishing. And you're like, oh, I thought, I thought the writing would be the hard part. The editing is the hard part. And you spend so long in roughly isolation writing the thing out. And then when you start to get feedback in, which I've got sort of a team of people that are reading the book in preparation for launch week, which is coming up. I've received a couple notes from people saying like, I love the few minutes I get per day to go and read your book because it's really impactful, really awesome. I'm enjoying it. And to hear that and get that feedback is just the stuff in your book is good, which it sounds a little braggadocio. I know the stuff in my book is good because I've tested it with so many clients, but to hear it in the real world from someone who's not your editor, for
Yeah.
example, you're like, okay, yes, it is working. It is good. People do like it. And so to get that confirmation is really nice.
Yeah, that's great. This is your first book?
In my first book.
You scared about launch week?
Not really.
Yeah.
The way I view it, my wife cracks up when I trot out like a folksy term, but I've heard it referred to as the hay is in the barn, where, like the hay's in the barn, you've already done so much
Yeah.
work. At this point, nothing's going to change because the book's already written, the copy's already locked, the editing's already done. Amazon is waiting to publish it. I've got author copies coming. And so, okay, we're good now. And now I get to do the fun part, which is actually like hopping on podcasts with people like you, where I can talk about it. I'm sure it was this way when you wrote your books. There's kind of a Goldilocks zone right after you complete a book where your mind is so engrossed in what you've written and what you've spent so long focusing on. It's like, I feel sharper mentally from all the concepts that are in my book because when you write, you have to clarify your thinking
Yeah.
anyway. And so I'm kind of enjoying this really nice sharpness that comes with talking about my book, thinking about my book, and sometimes even dreaming about my book and changing
Are you
words
having
around
dr
and stuff.
are
A
you
couple
having
times
dreams?
during the editing
Yeah.
process,
Yeah.
I was having some book editing dreams, which I was
That is
surprised at that.
so
I
cool.
wasn't expecting that.
That is so cool. It is such an engrossing experience though. Like the last one I wrote, I couldn't write anything else. Thank God for AI because it was just like help me out with this other stuff I have to get done. But it was such an outpouring of everything and I was so engrossed in it. It just took over everything. Almost I felt to the point where the book started to take on a life of its own, to the point where I felt like I was just a participant in making sure it happened. Did you ever get a sense like that?
Yeah, when you really get in the flow. For me, it was towards the last half of the book where I'm talking about storytelling and some of my
Yeah.
really favorite topics where you're just in the zone. And I've heard other authors talk about this where it's more like you're just sort of I don't think in these terms, but I've heard it described as like you're a scribe for the muse,
Yeah.
where it's like it's moving through you and you're just there writing stuff down. Right.
Yeah.
And I think really all that is simply, the material really, really well, probably the best in the world. And then in what order to put the material in so that you can get it into the mind of someone else.
Yes.
Uh, in the same way that you think about it. And
Yeah.
that's really what I view the book is like it's a copy of my mind
Yeah.
for someone else delivered in a very particular sequence, so that I don't have to be there to help them get the result that they want. Great. If they want to hire me, great. That's fine. I'll let them, right? But there are people that I will never meet that will read my book and then they'll reach out to me and say, "Oh, this changed my entire life." And like that's the stuff I know will happen.
Yeah.
And I'm excited about it.
Yeah, that is really cool. What is the big thing from an author standpoint that you want somebody who finishes your book to get? Like, what's your hope that they get?
Yeah. So I think my hope is that they feel they feel more confident around people so that they can do bigger things.
Mm,
In many ways, developing better people skills, it's a good goal, but it's sort of a hurdle on the way to something bigger, right? They want to, you know, finally branch out and start their own company, right? And they know they need to be a good leader. They know they're going to have to talk to a lot of people for either raising funds or just talking to customers, right? And so there's usually a bigger why. And so what's interesting about what I do is there can be a lot of shame or guilt around. I feel like I should have developed these skills earlier in life, but I haven't. And so what that leads to is a feeling of these, because no one talks about it. They talk about it to me, but they don't talk about it nearly anywhere else. And so once they realize that they can change what they thought was unchangeable, then they kind of look around in their life and say, well, if I could do that, what
yeah.
else can I do?
Yeah, that's great. Okay. Well, there's going to be links in the show notes, both on the website and in the YouTube description box. I'm just going to highlight that now since we're talking about the book, where you
Yeah.
can go get the book. This will come out probably mid-February around the same time as your launch. So hopefully we time it just right. But for people who are like really having a hard time like with conversations, what are some easy ways that people can get started having easier conversations?
Yeah. In a sequenced order, one is a mistake that people make when they're entering conversations. Say that you're at a meetup or a conference or something like that, and you're like, hey, there's someone over there I would like to go talk to in between session breaks or whatever. They default to what I call safety energy, where maybe there are a couple people talking and you kind of do the penguin walk and you're over there and you're just kind of hovering on the outside hoping that they'll invite you in, and they might, and that would be great. But that's the kind of the wrong way to go about it. The right way to go about it is to dial in your energy and be a little bit more enthusiastic than you normally would be. And the reason for this is because we also have to sort of view things from other people's perspectives as well. When they see someone walking up, they might be thinking, because everyone is a little self-conscious in varying degrees. Oh, what's this person want? Are they cool? Are they a bore? Are they, what's going on? If you can communicate to them like, hey, I'm enthusiastic, I'm going to commit to talking to you, maybe by asking a simple question like, oh, do you enjoy the speaker that just spoke on stage? And you have good energy, higher energy, that is actually enabling the other person to boomerang that energy back to you. You're giving people permission on how much energy they can return to you.
Mm.
because you'll notice in different areas of life, like no one's going to be that bombastic at a funeral, right? Because the energy level is appropriate for that setting.
Sure.
But they are going to be maybe a lot more energetic at a party or something like that. And so you have more control than you think on how you present yourself. And I've got more thoughts, but any thoughts or observations on that?
Yeah. Dialing in energy. Because, okay, I imagine, you're nervous. Maybe you don't know, like the first event I went to in the WordPress space, I didn't know anybody at all. So I'm trying to put myself back into that place. I don't know what I did. I just was me. But for somebody who, and there's a lot of people in the tech space, especially who go into tech because it's like, I'd rather talk to a computer than a human. But
Yeah.
the reason we use computers is to enable other humans. So it's really important for those people to learn these types of skills. So you're feeling nervous, you're feeling anxiety. You may actually have sensations in your body that are telling you, don't do this. What should you do? Like, do you talk to yourself? Do you breathe deeper? Do you, I mean, I have a lot of ways that I do, get myself energy up for, like, if I have to give a presentation, but for somebody who's like really in an anxiety state, what techniques could they use?
Yeah. So one that is useful. I didn't come up with this, but because this is a pretty famous example, is box breathing, where you inhale for a 4 count, you hold for a 4 count, you exhale for a 4 count, and repeat. And if I'm remembering right, that's triggering your parasympathetic nervous
Yeah.
system to like your rest and digest, where it physiologically is going to calm you down a little bit. What else I think is really helpful is, like, my people tend to be overthinkers, and so if they're able to just think a little less before the event, that can usually be pretty helpful. And what I mean by that is simply, if you know you're going to be in some situation, it doesn't have to be a conference, it could be something else, where you're like, hey, I know that there's probably going to be this type of situation that might arise. A session might end, everyone's out in the hall, maybe grabbing drinks. And if I see someone who is looking around, I'll go talk to them. So I call that if, when, then, where if this happens, or when this happens, if this condition is met, then I will take an action. And so you do a little bit of thinking ahead of time, just in a very loose way, where you think, oh, well, this set of conditions is probably going to happen. And so when that set of conditions materializes in the real world, you're not stuck thinking, should I or shouldn't I? You're thinking,
Mhm.
I've already thought about this. I know, look, it's happening right now. Then I know I can go up to them. And so if you go up to them, what should you do? What should you say? So I'm of the opinion that what you say first actually doesn't matter a whole lot. At a conference or any situation where there's kind of an expectation of socializing, it can be as simple as like, hey, I don't think we met before. I'm Jeff. And that first little bit, the reason it doesn't matter a whole lot is because you're just breaking the bubble of you
Yes.
and another person. And what's likely is that other person, they're having to adjust to a new person being there, and they're, all these signals that are traveling back and forth. So what you say second is, in my opinion, way more important than what you say first. And what should you say second? Well, if you're starting a conversation, what I tell my clients all the time is the social answers that you seek are in the environment waiting for you. It's very rarely, if ever, going to be magically locked in your brain where you just somehow come up with the perfect thing. Like, the perfect
Mhm.
thing does not exist. So if I'm at a conference, I think about what I share with the other person. We just watched the same speaker. Okay, that's right in the middle of the bullseye. That's probably the best thing to go with. But there's also the drinks table, the snack table that we're near, the lobby that we're near, the hotel, the city. And so there are all these overlapping things. The topic of the conference, like if it's a WordPress conference or something like that.
Yeah.
So there's so many layers to what you can go with that is reasonable, right? And so that's how I tell people in terms of thinking about, do your thinking beforehand and then look to the environment to figure out what you should say.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That was always my icebreaker, was asking them a question like, how do you use WordPress? Like that,
Yeah,
because so many
perfect.
people use it in different ways, but it's like they're there at a WordPress conference. So I ask them, how do you use WordPress? And I'd also not go into Like if there's a group of people already having a conversation, like let them. And I would go find the person who was sitting looking at the schedule or something that you could tell somebody was
Right.
like just filling time and they're alone too. And those people, you just sit down next to them and just what you said. Hi, I'm Kathy. How do you use WordPress? That type of thing. And then you immediately have someone to talk to, someone that, and letting other people talk about themselves. Everybody wants to talk about themselves. Everybody wants to share. And so giving them the opportunity to share first, just it works so
Yeah.
much better because it just like puts you at ease.
Yeah. I always think about it just like holding the door for someone. Like
Yeah.
if I'm approaching a door and we kind of both get there at the same time, I'm going to hold the door for you because it's just a nice thing to do.
Yeah.
And then, maybe there's another door that we've all done the thing where there's like the double set where you hold the door for someone and they hold the door for you. It's like, okay, a conversation can be a lot like that where, uh, and what's funny is the people that ask good questions, they really stick out because it actually seems like people don't ask as many questions as maybe they should. Uh,
Yeah.
where they just they talk about themselves and they kind of talk about what's going on with them and or their opinions on things, and just a really good well-placed question where you pause and let the other person talk. It feels a lot more rare than maybe it used to. I don't know. All I know is I've been noticing it a little bit more where, I'm grabbing coffee with people talking about the book and they'll ask me some questions, and I'll have to actually think and have a good conversation. It's really rewarding and really refreshing.
Yeah. You know what I've noticed is the people who ask questions and want to dive deeper on you, they're usually really smart people. They're trying to figure stuff out. They want to know what's
Exactly.
the opportunity. They want to see a pattern. They're trying to explore their reality. They don't really feel that they're more confident. Like I've met a number of very intelligent people who are entrepreneurs, and they're always fun conversations because they're the ones that are asking me more questions than anything, wanting to
Yeah.
know, what are you doing here? What's this all about? What's the
Yep.
opportunity there? And they're seeking opportunities, they're seeking further knowledge. So I always take a step back of just like, I know what you're doing.
And
You're not just
they're
having a
asking different kind of
conversation.
questions too, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like they're asking higher level questions, strategic
Oh,
questions where they're like, "Hey, well, have you thought about this?" And like what's your view there? And it's like I'm just thinking of this now, so hopefully this lands. Like they're looking for a software update. They're
yeah.
looking for like a mental model software update where they're like, "Hey, maybe there's something I can learn by seeing how this person does something, or maybe there's something that I can help this person with or get them to think about something a little differently."
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it's another way that people can find confidence in having those kinds of conversations. Because I know a lot of people who are you're in the tech space, you've obviously had to figure out a lot of things, figuring out patterns especially. Just look at a conversation as another pattern to figure out. This is just it doesn't matter if you're judged. You're there and you're spelunking into other people's experiences. What can you learn? How's this going to help you grow? How's this going to help you do something that you've never done before? How's it going to help you find greater confidence in your knowledge, because knowledge helps with capabilities and confidence as well. So it might be just an interesting reframe to see it as opportunity.
Yeah. And to your point, one of the biggest things that holds people back generally from confidence and other things is simply the fear of looking silly or being embarrassed, right? Uh, and I think this goes to the kernel of the fear of public speaking. When really, if you boil it down, people are concerned with what other people think of them. How I think about this is I call it the movie poster reframe, where picture you're walking past a bunch of movie posters on the outside of a theater, and you walk past your own poster. Okay, you're the biggest head on that poster. Maybe your spouse is next to you on your left, a little bit smaller, and then you've got your family, maybe your kids, and maybe some really close friends at the bottom. They're all the smaller heads. You've got important people from your past. It's a tiny little text at the bottom. You walk a little further and you see your spouse's movie poster. If they're the biggest face on the movie poster, you're now in the same spot they were, and you've got some of their friends and so on and so forth. And you get down to just people that have met you. And for most people, you're not on the movie poster. I'm sorry to break it to you. You're not the major head. You're not the supporting head. You're not the heads at the bottom. You're on some people's movie posters. You might be in the text at the bottom, but many of them you're not. And what I like about that actually is it's very freeing, because if we're concerned about talking to someone, we're concerned about reaching out to someone, we're concerned about asking for something, whatever it happens to be, we're trying to grab onto something that we never had, which
Mm.
is we're afraid of losing some thing that never existed. And odds are when you send that email, that's a pitch email to do XYZ thing, or you start that conversation with someone at a conference, guess what? There's all upside. There's no downside because you never had anything in the beginning.
You're only the main character in your own play.
Yep.
Yeah, that's so true. And that's definitely a good way of thinking about it. You'll appreciate the fact that my daughter told me that she wasn't worried about something. She's 17, because other people are just worried about themselves. I was
Oh
just like,
man, she's gonna go places, because think about at 17 having that mindset,
yeah,
because most people at 47 or 57 don't have that mindset. Like she gets the benefit of time. Like I work with all ages pretty much, like anywhere from some occasionally college students, rarely, but occasionally up to people in their 60s. And it's just like the younger you are, if you have sort of a good mental operating system for approaching this stuff, you've got the time horizon
yeah,
that people, that other people just don't have.
yeah. Yeah, I might not have done a lot of things right, but I raised a couple of kids that won't need me soon. So they're doing exceptionally well. It'll
That's
be
that's the
exciting to
goal, right?
watch. That's the goal. Yeah, but it's kind of like, well, they call me, my son's 25. He calls me if like he gets hurt or if he can't figure out his taxes. I'm like, oh, don't call me about that. Like that's the last thing you want to call mom for, but uh,
Let
that
me
kind
give you
of
the number
stuff.
of my accountant.
Exactly. It's like some things, but like I'm still mom. I'm
Yeah,
always going to be mom, but it's like, yeah, they're very confident in who they are and what they're doing and where they're going, even at 17. So yeah,
that's
they
great.
will do amazing things. So I've done something right in my life. So
Yeah,
that's
obviously.
that's
Yeah, it's obvious.
encouraging. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about public speaking because I really firmly believe that no matter who you are, whether you are in tech, whether you are an accountant, whether there is the one thing that has changed my life more than anything else has been standing on stages and sharing my knowledge, my experience, my stories, and obviously a call to action. But all of these things changed my life. I don't think I'm the best public speaker in the world, but I built the confidence enough to get up there and do it. And I think everyone should try public speaking, no matter how
Yeah,
scary it
100%.
is. So help us find that confidence. What would you say to someone who will be benefited by putting their voice out there, whether it's on a YouTube video or on a stage, on a Zoom meetup, wherever they're going to be able to share themselves? How can they get over that first? It's going to be
Yeah.
scary, right?
Yeah. And so how I think about it is, and I think this resonates for a lot of people, is I really need a why to be able to do something. Like if there's no why attached, I just don't care.
Sure.
I think a lot of people like that. Like you think I want to know what the benefit is. Well, I'm also a systems thinker. And so when I think of the surface area of luck, where say that we'll take two extreme examples. One example is over a 12-month period, someone only leaves their house once and they go talk to one other person. Guess what? That's a lot of pressure on that one interaction. Say this person's goal is to, find a business partner for a startup that they want to try their hand at. That's a lot of pressure on that one person. And the odds of it actually working out are next to zero, right? Because it's just too much pressure on that one person and everything has to line up. It's not realistic. Another extreme example, say that you met 100 people a day for a year. How many potential people could you connect with over that year? It would be a lot. And what's great about speaking in terms of you could be on a stage, you could be on a YouTube video, you could be on a Zoom meetup, you get to scale that feeling of, hey, I am one person, I'm speaking to many people. And so it is way higher leverage than just going meeting people one on one, which you should be doing, but probably that comes after when people approach you after the event. And so if you view it through the lens of, look, I might want to just make more friends. Great. Might want to meet a business partner. Great. Might want to just have more connection professionally. Great. The answer to 80% of your problems in life, simply meet more people. You don't like your job, meet more people. You want to go on more dates, meet more people. You want to accelerate your business, meet more people, right? And so first, get that why. And two, just realize that, like, look, it's scary for effectively everyone. I think there's a false sense that people carry with them that says, oh, because they look at the TED Talks, they see a Simon Sinek or whatever. I don't know Simon's internal thoughts, right? But for the vast majority of people, they are way more like you than you might think, because a lot of people fall into the trap of comparing their inside to other people's outside.
Hmm.
And we can't do that because everyone has an inner life, everyone has inner fears. And most people tend to feel a little bit nervous before any event that they do. There are probably some people that just never feel it. That's great. Naturally gifted. I'll put that in quotes because they probably just learned it really early. They had a really charismatic parent or something like that. But if you can internalize the notion that, like, hey, there's not as much of a gap between me and other people as I might think. That to me is one of the most helpful reframes of, hey, I'm thinking about doing this thing. It's scary. Well, life is scary. Have you ever driven on an interstate at rush hour where there are semis? Like, that's actually dangerous. That's way more dangerous than signing up for leading a meeting at your company where, it's a little bit larger meeting than you've ever been in and you're going to present this thing. Great, do it. If you can engineer it so that you're putting yourself in positions that are reasonably small at first, recording a video and posting it on YouTube, I think that would count. And you can get repetitions and then look back and say, hey, every time I do this, I'm improving. Great. That effort gravity has taken place where that effort is getting lower and lower and lower every time you do
Yeah.
it. Any thoughts on any of that?
Yeah. No, I think the really good insights, and takes away a lot of the spins that people get in their mind when they're overthinking of, like, oh, I've got to do this thing and I've got to go meet people, go speak at this group, that kind of thing. The one thing that I would say is the fear never goes away. It never really does. It lessens, but, like, I won't even try to count how many talks I've done. I had to do one yesterday and it's been a while, but I still, the energy is amped up before you go into it. As soon as you start speaking, it starts to dissipate. It's just like the 15 minutes before you have to do the thing, that it's
Mhm.
it's always going to be scary. So you just kind of habituate yourself to understanding that fear is just always going to be there. That doesn't mean you don't do it.
Oh yeah, 100%. And if you'll indulge me, I'll read you a one sentence quote from my book that I
Yeah.
have pulled up right here. In the last chapter, I do 20 lessons over 20 years, and the 20th lesson is, you don't need to be socially fearless. You need to act to dissipate the fear of being social. Now, insert anything in place of being social and socially fearless. To act dissipates fear. I am convinced that the more internal focus that you put on yourself. Why am I this way? Oh, I'm in an interaction. How am I doing in this interaction? Guess what? The report card you give yourself is always going to be a failing grade because there's too much introspection. The more external you go, you end up not concerned with your inner state much at all. You're asking questions, you're making observations, you're being curious. And guess what? You're starting to enter like that flow state of, hey, I'm just talking to people.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm convinced that It's okay to reflect, and reflecting is good, but don't reflect while you're in a
Right.
social interaction when you should be present, because nothing good will come of it. uh
Right.
like I a few years ago, I did a training for one of the biggest churches in my area, and I did not think at any point when I was running that workshop, how am I doing? Because there's no upside there.
Hmm.
Instead, you're thinking really tactically, like, you know, how much time is left in this segment, and like maybe I'll go over to this table because I haven't heard from them in a little bit. You know, you've got your like your Britney Spears mic or whatever, and you're just walking around, and that's way more helpful. And so, trying to go more tactical and like what's actually happening, that's a good move instead of thinking internally, how am I doing?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. As soon as you go internal, it's like
Yeah.
you've ruined it. Being
Yeah.
present.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be present. Somebody asked me a question a few weeks ago about, it was like a sales training. Um, Somebody invited me, oh, I'll bite, I'll go to this. And they asked the question of like, what 3 words would you say identify your capability when you know you're in a good sales call? And I couldn't think of a sales call because I'm like, no, I'm really doing any sales calls. But I thought about this podcast, and it's curiosity, presence, and playfulness. And I just honed in, and then I'm like, wait a minute, that doesn't just apply to this podcast. That applies to presenting. It applies to having a conversation with my kids. Everything, just being present with someone. That's why I told you before we started recording, I don't come here with questions. I want to hear from you, and I want to have a
Mhm.
conversation with you. I want to be present, and I want to follow where that curiosity takes me. And then I want to play in that space. And it just encapsulated everything for me, like my presentation, everything. I want to bring that not into just the podcast, but like everything I do. And I think it really applies to, there's no need for confidence there if you're just going into it for curiosity and playfulness. Your confidence then comes out, you because I really believe that we have everything that, whether it's God-given, however you want to frame it for yourself, we are all that we need in order to live a successful life. We just have to let it out. And our minds are the thing that doesn't let it out. Our thinking, the stories we tell ourselves, we're blocking confidence more than anything else. And so you
Yeah.
can use a lot of these techniques, and, I use the box breathing all the time to calm me down, to sleep sometimes. Just shut
Yeah.
off brain. But we have it in us, don't we?
Yeah. And there's so much to unpack there. One thing that I'll posit, I'm not particularly fond of the term confidence or presence, not because they're bad terms. I literally named my book Confidence Maxing. Uh, but they're what I call zipped terms, like a zipped
Yeah.
file that you might download, because really you have to explode that file, and there are nested skills within each of those, right? And I think that feeling of playfulness and curiosity, those are certainly two of the skills that would go into being present.
Yeah.
And so whenever you hear someone say, "Oh, just be confident or just be present," well, you really have to click into that and figure out, like, oh, well, what's actually like, what are the skills? Because you can't tell an employee, "Hey, I need you to be more present when you're answering the phone." That means different things to every person.
Sure.
I need you to be more confident when you're on the phone. Well, that means different things to every person. You need to say, "Hey, here are the skills. Like, I want you to be, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this," so that you can actually get your arms around it to really dig into like what that actually means. And then it becomes easy because it ends up being a downstream effect, where the upstream effect is probably, don't want to be internally focused. I want to be focused on the other person. I want to be playful. I want to be curious. I want to be knowledgeable about the thing that I'm helping them with, or whatever happens to be. And then you've got all the ingredients for presence and confidence, but you've labeled all the associated skills earlier in the flow.
Love it. I love it. This might be my favorite clip from this entire episode, because you explained some things that I kind of knew intuitively, but you explained them in a way that just really succinctly got to the point of what I'm really aiming for with confidence, with presence. is that there's a whole other set of other things under there. So watch for that clip.
I will.
that
Yeah.
that was great. That was amazing.
I'm sure you could explain things about WordPress and security that I wouldn't know anything about. And it really just comes from a decade plus of exposing yourself to these concepts constantly and thinking about them. And like I told you, it's probably a little bit of the sharpness from writing the book that is still in my mind, most likely. So
Yeah.
that's what I'll
No,
chalk it up to.
amazing. Well, with that, I am going to be respectful of your time because I want to see this book do really well. You are an amazing. This is one of my favorite conversations that I've had on this
I
podcast
appreciate it.
yet. So thank you so much for being here, Jeff. Just for people who are listening, where can they find you online? And we'll have
Yeah.
links and everything, but just in case they're listening, where
Yeah.
can they find you?
So you can find me on social media at the Jeff Callahan. And then if you want to check out my book and you can read a free preview chapter at becomemorecompelling.com/book. I want to get this book into as many hands as possible because I know that for some people reading it, it's going to change their life. And that's the goal and that's the purpose.
Amazing. Well, thank you for giving us a taste of all of that today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.